Okay, so today we're going to look into something
Yeah,
that we think might be way more common than people think,
absolutely.
and that is married men seeking discreet hookups with other men.
Right.
And we have a lot of interesting information that we pulled from menmeetmen.com.
Yeah, that's a really interesting website for
Yeah,
this.
menmeetmen.com.
So right off the bat, what we see is
Yeah.
a focus on safety respect and a non-judgmental approach, which I think is really crucial for this topic.
Absolutely. So, we're not here to point fingers or make assumptions.
Not at all.
We're just trying to understand,
Right.
a side of humanity
Yeah, a facet of human experience.
that maybe isn't talked about as much as it should be.
Right, and it really acknowledges that same-sex attraction
Right.
exists in all walks of life, even within marriage.
Absolutely. And so what we pulled was some information about how married men who experience these feelings
Right.
might navigate them discreetly and safely.
Yeah.
And that goes all the way from motivation,
Right.
but to, how to practically do it.
The practicalities of it.
And then the emotional side too.
Absolutely. The emotional side is huge.
Right. So,
So this resource really digs into the why.
yeah.
Like, why would a married man want to seek these discreet hookups with other men?
Yeah.
And it looks at, is it even possible to do this in a responsible way?
Right.
And it gives some concrete suggestions for, starting safely online
Right.
in the real world
Right.
and then protecting your privacy,
Yeah.
which is a big one,
Huge.
and then navigating the emotional landscape of it all.
Right.
So it's pretty comprehensive.
So we're going to take all this information
Yeah.
and unpack it
Yes.
for you, the listener.
Absolutely.
Give you a clear picture of the options
Yes.
and considerations
Yeah.
for these married men who are exploring this.
Good.
So let's start with the why.
Okay.
So according to menmeetmen.com,
Right.
what are some of the key reasons a married man might seek discreet hookups with other men?
Well, one of the biggest reasons is untapped same-sex attraction.
Ah.
So perhaps this attraction wasn't fully realized or acted upon before they got married.
Right.
It could be from, societal pressures to marry heterosexually
Right.
at a younger age, or maybe a later acceptance of one's own sexual identity.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not necessarily like they were, being dishonest with themselves
Not necessarily, no.
or with their partner.
It's that sexual identity can be fluid
Yeah.
and doesn't always, fit neatly into the boxes that we try to put it in.
Right.
And it can evolve over time.
Okay. So what are some other motivations?
So curiosity is another big one.
Okay.
A desire to explore sexual fantasy or aspects of attraction that maybe they haven't experienced.
Right.
Also, the website talks about the possibility of a lack of fulfillment within the marriage.
Okay.
So this could involve a lack of emotional or physical intimacy,
Yeah.
leading someone to seek connection elsewhere.
Okay. So it's not always just about the
Yeah.
sex. It's about a broader.
It can be about a broader need for connection
Okay.
that may be missing in their current relationship.
That's interesting.
So they're looking for a connection, whether it's emotional, physical, or both,
Right.
with another man, but they don't necessarily want to blow up their marriage or
Yeah.
completely redefine their identity.
Right.
And for some, it can be a path to a deeper understanding of themselves
Yeah.
and their desires.
Okay. So I really like that they validate these feelings.
Yes.
They say something like,
Right.
your feelings are valid even if they're complex.
Right. And that's so important
Right.
because it can be a very isolating and confusing experience.
Right. And you may feel like, oh, I'm the only one who
Right.
feels this way.
Exactly.
So it's nice that they validate that.
It normalizes it.
Now, can these feelings actually be explored responsibly and without risk?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah.
And according to menmeetmen.com, the answer is yes,
Okay.
but there are some precautions you need to take.
Yeah.
Like being discreet,
Yeah.
careful consideration,
Right.
and respect for everyone involved.
And they say that discretion is not inherently dishonest.
Right. They frame it as a form of carefulness
Okay.
and consideration for all parties.
Okay. So,
So it's not about lying.
yeah.
It's about being thoughtful and respectful.
Right. And protecting everyone involved.
Exactly.
Okay. So where should someone even begin if they're considering this?
Well, the website breaks it down into some practical starting points.
Okay.
So first is self-reflection.
Okay.
Really think about what you're seeking.
Yeah.
Are you looking for sexual fulfillment,
Right.
emotional connection,
Right.
maybe just the opportunity for open conversation?
Yeah.
You also need to check in on your emotional readiness.
Okay.
Is this exploration driven by genuine desire?
Okay.
Or Are you trying to avoid issues in your marriage?
Right.
That's a big one.
Right.
And they even suggest anonymous online chatting as a first step.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's a low-pressure way to
Right.
kind of test the waters.
Yeah, to explore those feelings without having to expose yourself immediately.
Right, just kind of get your toe in the water.
Yeah, dip your toe in.
See how it feels.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about finding connections? What do they suggest?
Well, they advise using hookup apps that prioritize user privacy,
Okay.
like Field and Atom for Atom.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're known for catering to discrete encounters.
Okay.
And the key here is to look for forums and websites that have really strong discretion policies in place.
Right.
And avoid platforms that link directly to your personal social media.
Right. Yeah, that would defeat the purpose.
Exactly, because then everybody knows
Right.
who you are.
Yeah. You're not being discreet anymore.
No, not at all.
Okay. And they also emphasize pacing.
Yes, pacing is
Yeah.
crucial. Don't
Sure.
rush into anything.
Okay.
Start with online chatting,
Right.
get a sense of the person,
Yeah.
talk about privacy expectations and boundaries.
Yeah.
And most importantly, trust your instincts.
Yeah.
If something feels off,
Yeah.
don't do it.
Right. You got a bad feeling.
Yeah, back out.
Trust your gut.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they talk about some real-world options too.
Yes, they do.
This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah, this is where it gets juicy.
So what are some of the things that they suggest?
So they mentioned gay saunas,
Okay.
where anonymity is often just built in.
Yeah.
You don't need a profile or anything.
Yeah.
They also mentioned swingers clubs.
Okay.
Some of them offer specific events for mixed gender couples
Right.
or people interested in bisexual encounters.
Okay.
So that can provide some discretion as well.
Right.
And then there's cruising.
Okay.
But with cruising, you really need to be cautious.
Right.
Understand the etiquette
Right.
and the potential risks involved.
Right. So you're saying the common thread here is to select environments
Right.
where privacy is either built in or is valued by the community.
Absolutely. So minimizing the potential for exposure.
Okay. And of course they talk about how to maintain privacy.
Yes, that's a big one.
And that's where we get into some really practical tips.
Right.
These small steps that can make a huge difference.
Right. The little things that can really protect you.
Okay, so what are some of their suggestions?
So they recommend creating separate email addresses,
Okay.
even dedicated phone numbers,
Wow.
just for these communications.
Okay.
Don't share any personally identifiable information early on,
Right.
like your full name, your workplace, your hometown.
Yeah.
And don't store any sensitive conversation photos or contact info on your main phone.
Right.
Keep it separate.
Okay, so these are all things that you can actually do
Yes.
pretty easily.
Yeah, they're not that hard.
Right, and they can really make a big
It's
difference
a huge difference.
in your security and privacy.
Absolutely.
Then we have to talk about the emotional side of this.
Yes, this is a really important part.
I mean, there are a lot of emotions that can come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guilt, confusion, maybe shame.
Right? All of those are completely normal.
Okay, good. So they acknowledge this.
Yes, they do.
And they're not judging people for feeling this way.
Right. They're saying it's understandable.
Okay.
You're not alone.
Okay.
And exploring these desires doesn't mean you have to change everything about your life.
Okay, that's good to hear.
You don't have to get divorced.
Right.
You don't have to come out to everyone.
Right.
It's about self-awareness,
Yeah.
not about blowing up your life.
And they suggest counseling.
Yes.
Yes.
If the emotional challenges become too much,
Okay.
they recommend seeking out a therapist who specializes in this area
Right.
because it can be a lot to handle on your own.
Okay, so what's the main takeaway from all this?
I think the main takeaway is that this is more common
Right.
than we think.
Then we realize.
Yes, and there's no need to rush into anything.
Okay.
You don't have to label yourself.
Right.
You don't have to make any huge changes.
Okay.
Just explore at your own pace
Right.
and in a way that feels right for you.
Okay, and they really emphasize
Right.
safety and respect
Yes.
throughout this whole process.
Absolutely.
It's about protecting yourself,
Right.
protecting the people you're involved with,
Right.
and being respectful of everyone's boundaries.
Yeah. And they end by saying, explore in a way that feels authentic to you.
Right.
Don't let society dictate how you should feel or what you should do.
Yeah, be true to yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so that was a really interesting look
It was.
at a topic that I think we need to talk about more.
Absolutely.
And it makes me think
Yeah.
about the broader implications.
Right.
We're talking about self-awareness and exploration within marriage,
Yeah.
but what does that tell us about desire and identity and societal expectations
Yeah.
around relationships in general?
That's a big question
Yeah,
that maybe we need to explore further.
that's something to think about.
Definitely food for thought.
That's it for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.